for those of you live, thank you for being here. So the first thing I'll say is don't take notes. Don't take notes. At the end, I'm going to give you all my contact information, and I'll give you my cell phone, and you can text me, and I will send you a PDF of every slide that I show you. So every slide that I show you, I will send them to you and give them to you, okay? And my goal tonight is to get you inspired a little bit to want to learn more about neurolinguistic programming and how you can use it, particularly for your coaching practice or for your business. I use it personally and professionally. I've been using it since I was 18 years old when I first found out about neurolinguistic programming. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to tell you my story right now in too much detail. I'm going to go right into this. Okay? So the first question that always comes up about this stuff is, does it really work? Can you really, really get good results with people? And my performance hack for marketing is just getting great results. I think it's the best form of marketing out there, is getting really good, consistent results with the people that you're working with. And when you do that, the results speak for themselves. So here's some results of what you can do using a technology like neurolinguistic programming, particularly if you combine it with something like hypnosis. But this is a lot of this is from straight up neurolinguistic programming. Here's a nurse who lost 122 pounds in 18 months, kept it off for over 3 years. So any weight loss testimonials I will ever show you are at least 2 years or older, because usually within 2 years, the time by which the people gain back the weight in most dieting. So we only publish success stories that are over 2 years and holding, okay? This is a diabetic who lost 36 pounds. He also quit smoking. He was a Campbell City worker. Here's another guy, Paul Johnson. Paul Johnson had rheumatoid arthritis. So he had very difficult time moving or exercising. He had a lot of physical limitations. He also had a young child at home. And for those of you who've had children, you know what those first few years are like. It's very, very hard on the body. He lost 58 pounds in 7 months, but 3 years later, he was down even more weight and still holding, which is why I put that one in there as well. Okay, here's the mayor of the town where my clinic is in Silicon Valley. I have a clinic there. I've had it there since 2002. He lost 35 pounds. He's the only client that came in and asked me to turn it off because he lost weight so fast, his skin, when you lose weight really fast, your skin will sag a little bit. Most of the time it gets elastic and it comes back, but if you don't keep it off long enough, you don't discover that and find out it's true. All the women at work thought he had cancer because he lost weight really fast, but he was fine. This is Sabrina. Now Sabrina was a referral from her mom. And again, one of the networking strategies I have, or one of the business building strategies, is just get good results. Sabrina came in because her mom came in and lost over 50 pounds. Her mom referred Sabrina. Sabrina lost 83 pounds. Sabrina's dad came in, grandma came in, aunt came in, and another family, close family friend came in, and then a bunch of people that they referred. So she lost a bunch of weight. She's married now. She got married this last year. Here's Lonnie Ashton. Lonnie Ashton has referred to me probably 100 people over the years. He's been smoke-free. These slides are about 3 years old. He's been smoke-free well over a decade at this point, lost a bunch of weight. Here's a golfer, the grandson of Cesar Chavez. He was ranked 27th in California when his coach called me up. He was having confidence issues up in his head, and every time he would get into the winner's circle, which is where not only do you have to play golf at the top level, but you have to play against your biggest opponents, and they're watching you, and it's very psychologically demanding. He started choking. 27th in California. I coached him for 3 months. At the end of that, he beat the #1 ranked kid in the country after 18 holes head-to-head. He did it in a shootout. 2 years later, he got full-ride scholarships to Arkansas State Big Golf School and Stanford. He went to Arkansas State. He left early to go on the Pro Tour, South American Pro Tour. So he's a pro golfer now. Here's a real estate agent. Now she originally came in for weight loss, then she did a stress program, then she did another program, then she did a course with us called How to Read and Lead with Integrity. And at the time she had a part-time, she worked at Cisco, she had a part-time real estate company. And she had a 283% increase in volume that first year. She went from 58.7 to 163.7. The next year, she quit Cisco, opened up her full-time real estate, and a couple years later, she's a broker now and doing well, and she tries to sell me houses a lot. Okay. Now this is an interesting one. So this is a client that came in off a Groupon ad. Groupon for $50, you know, come explore hypnosis for weight loss. And she came in, and I ended up selling her what she actually needed, which was business coaching. So she had a graphic arts company, and her goal or phase 1, I was going to coach them for 3 months. The metric we were looking to achieve was to increase annual sales and high-end corporate list. And before, she was at 234,000. 1 year later, she was at 812,000. In 1 year, and she got Tesla. She does all those license plate covers for Tesla, those silver license plate covers. I should say she did, because then she sold her company for over $1 million and started something new. Okay? Here's a local bank. This is a guy who originally came in to quit smoking. This is, I think, the last one I'll show you here. But he originally came in to quit smoking. A couple years later, he came back for a follow-up. He started smoking again. So you might think, gosh, did we fail? We didn't fail at all. He was going through a divorce. He started smoking cigars again. He came back in, got that taken care of. 2 years later, he had, I won't go into that story, but he had some other issues going on. We worked with that, and then that turned into consulting for his entire bank. 3 banks. I consulted them. Again, a 3-month phase 1. We coached the team for 3 months. The metric was to increase new loans written in commercial real estate market. The January 2014, they did 2 million. The January afterwards, oops, 7 million the next year. After 3 months of coaching, very, very minor coaching, teaching some of the distinctions and things that you can learn in NLP and personality profiling, the way that we teach it at NLP Institute of California. He has now sold all 3 of the banks for $55 million a year and a half ago. And so he called me up and thanked me, and he's retired. Okay? And then we have some more results. So we'll skip this slide, but normally I start off when I'm working with coaches or hypnotists or things like that. We talk about what's the #1 real issue that most of us have to getting more results. And most of the time people think it's, you know, it's marketing, it's this, it's that, it's the program that they're using. A lot of times it's you. It's you and what's going on in your mind, okay, and how you're getting in your own way. So this is NLP, and NLP is short for neuro-linguistic program. It means to use, it means neuro is your nervous system, linguistic is language, and program is to reprogram your nervous system through the use of language. And if you think about it, you do that every time you give someone a compliment, and it's genuine and sincere and they feel it, it makes them feel different. You're influencing their nervous system using language. The same works as if you say something that maybe didn't land so well with somebody as well. We're always influencing other people, we're always influencing ourselves, and we're always reinforcing a thought, a feeling, or a behavior all the time. So NLP was created by Richard Bandler and John Grinder in the Santa Cruz Mountains in 1973. The real down low story is over a bottle of wine. And
it was more than a bottle of wine.
Yeah, we won't get into those stories, right? So now, Richard Bandler was a graduate student at the time. He was paying his way through school by working with a publishing company, and he was helping to publish and put together a book on Gestalt therapy by Fritz Perls, who's a very famous Gestalt therapist. And Fritz died before the book came out. Bandler needed to finish his college education, which was dependent upon that contract. So he went to the publisher and said, hey, listen, we've got all these videos of Fritz working. Can I use the videos and I'll finish the book? And the publisher said, I got nothing to lose, go ahead and do it. Then what happened was Richard started watching these videos, and he was seeing, Fritz would bring a person up to the front of a psychology class. He would work with them one-on-one, and then he would explain to everyone what he did and the steps that he took. Sounds amazing, but when Richard watched it, what he saw him doing and what he said he was doing were 2 very different things. They didn't match. He took it to his linguistics professor, John Grinder. So John Grinder was a linguistics professor at the University of Santa Cruz. The irony in that, if you know about Santa Cruz, because it's super liberal, is that Grinder used to work for the CIA, which is not written about very often. He was a master at going in, quickly assimilating, gathering information, then taking that intelligence back, and who knows what they did with it. So the 2 of them got together and said, there's something here, and there's something that's being missed. And they started to get curious, which is an important concept in NLP, and they started to wonder if there was a formula or a model for how these brilliant therapists got these seemingly magical results with people. Okay? And so they wondered if there was a structure to that. So they started to model through those videos what Fritz Perls was doing differently than everyone else. The second person they modeled was Virginia Satir. Virginia Satir was a very famous family therapist. often referred to as the mother of family therapy. My business partner, Tim Halbum, worked with her for a number of years, and she was famous for always getting the results in the last 10 minutes. If you know about Virginia, whether she had 2 hours or 3 hours or 20 minutes, she always got the results in the last 10 minutes. And she touched their hand a lot, which is where we learned a lot about what we call anchoring in NLP, and you'll hear more about that later. And Milton Erickson came down the road because Milton saw what they had pulled out of Fritz Perls and Virginia Satir, and he got intrigued. And then that's when they brought Milton Erickson in. For those who don't know, Milton Erickson is a very famous psychiatrist and a medical hypnotherapist. So that's where this connection between neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis really kind of come together. Okay, both of them have a lot to do with language, both of them have a lot to do with influence. Both of them have a lot to do with how to work with that part of the mind that seems outside of our reach and how to access it and make some changes. So, but they modeled them. And there's essentially 3 ways to think about NLP. First is a set of modeling tools that you can use to observe, model, and reproduce excellence in any field. Now, I spent a decade working in mental health before I became a coach in 2002, and I've been doing it full-time since 2002. I spent that decade, as I was learning neurolinguistic programming, modeling pathology, anxiety attacks, stress, pressure, you know, how people got into addictions. I've done a lot of work with addictions over the years, and these seemingly impossible things to overcome. How do you actually help someone neurologically make the decision and commitment to quit smoking permanently so that you can get them smoke-free, keep them smoke-free a decade? Or how do you actually change a person's entire life system of beliefs and ideologies around weight loss and genes and things? I was a fat kid growing up. I was severely overweight. I always believed I had the fat genes. I weighed more in middle school than I do now. That's a fact, and I could show you before and after pictures. So you can use it to model things that are excellent, but you can also use it to model problems so you can better understand how to work with it and find different ways. What led me to NLP originally when I was 18 is I was flunking out of college. I just put out an email on my list about this. I was flunking out of college. I was highly ADD, and when I would get to the bottom of a page that I was reading, I couldn't remember what I read. And I was an English major, philosophy minor, with an interest in psychology. Talk about torture, right? I mean, it was torture. And I had to find a different way to learn. And all the traditional methods, even the methods therapists suggested to help me, did not work. None of them worked for me, at least the way I was trying to go about it and get it into my brain. NLP allowed me to look at it with a fresh set of eyes and start to reconsider everything that I was told, every story that I had about myself, about what was possible for me in the world, what I could do about others. And it made me rethink all of that. And that's one of the greatest gifts that NLP can do. The second way to think about NLP is a set of processes that have been archived as a result of that modeling. So one of the organizations I'm part of right now is something called the R&R Project. You can go to R, the letter R, the word and, rproject.org or .com. And what you'll have there is an NLP-based process called the reconsolidation of traumatic memories. Now, this whole organization is designed to bring credibility to the field of NLP through the research and the proper recognition it deserves. So to give you a real tangible example, they took 120 vets. They ran them through this RTM protocol that I'm going to be teaching out in Albuquerque here very shortly with Will Murray on behalf of the R&R Project. They took 120 vets with severe PTSD. We're talking daily nightmares, flashbacks, and arousal symptoms, full diagnosis. Okay, there's a test called a PSSI-5. They scored incredibly high on that. 90% of them in 6 sessions or less, no more nightmares, no more flashbacks, no more arousal symptoms. They didn't even qualify for the diagnosis officially, which was a problem. These are Vietnam vets, vets from Afghanistan. These are people with severe traumas like our Hummer got attacked, my buddy's head got blown off, he died, fell in my lap, and I have 5 miles to drive to the checkpoint. Just yesterday, the suicide rate was reported of vets. I think it went from, it used to be 22 a day would kill themselves, and it's gone up again. There's an organization we're partnered with called 22-0, and their goal is to end military suicide. And unfortunately, it's not just from vets being in war, it's from military sexual traumas and all kinds of other things that can happen. This stuff can radically change lives. And I've had many, many people come into the office that have had traumas for 20, 30 years, could not heal it. And it doesn't work all the time. I'm not saying that NLP is a placebo for everything or that it will fix everything, but there are a lot of instances where someone doing therapy for 10, 20, 30 years can come in 1 hour. Like that, it can change. I'll give you one quick example. I had a woman as a professional singer, and in the early 70s, she would tour around the US in a Volkswagen bus before they had safety glass. So it was probably late 60s, early 70s. They got in an accident. She got thrown through the passenger window, which she was in the front passenger seat. She landed face first on the highway and had to have 13 reconstructive surgeries on her face. For the next almost 30 years, she could never, ever ride in the passenger seat of a car. She could drive it or sit in the back, couldn't ride in the passenger seat. Imagine professionally how that would become a problem, going to conferences, lunch meetings, things like that. Had not ridden in a single passenger seat in almost 30 years. Less than 1 hour in my office with a student present who was observing. And we drove up to Starbucks and back with her in the passenger seat of the car, talking, drinking coffee, no problem, cured. Cured. 30 minutes approximately is what it took. And that's something she had seen countless therapists for. It doesn't always work that fast, but it can. This stuff's worth knowing. The third way to think about NLP is a field of study. And it's the study of the structure of that seemingly subjective experience. That experience that seems kind of magical, which is why so many of the early books on NLP get misplaced in the bookstores, because they're called Structure of Magic 1 and 2 or Magic Demystified. That's why they all have the magic in them. It has nothing to do with magic tricks, you know, right? But it borrows from that because it seemed like magic, okay? So, what's it good for? Managing your internal mental and emotional state, staying resourceful during stressful times, gives you a higher degree of behavioral flexibility in difficult situations. Notice a lot of times as we get stressed and anxious and nervous, our bandwidth shrinks and shrivels until eventually we're down to caveman, fight, flight, or freeze, or expletives, right? And so ideally when we're staying open and calm and centered and at peace, our bandwidth starts to open back up and we have a lot more choice. One of the things that NLP is about is adding choice. What I love about it, and I tell people, is that thank God it's not brain surgery and it's not diffusing a bomb. We don't have to worry about cutting the wrong wire. We're only adding in choice. So you can always go back to your problem if you don't like the change that we do. You can always go back to how things were. We're not taking anything away. We're just adding stuff in. It will also dramatically increase the speed with which you learn. So for those of you who are coaches, learning NLP in any niche area that you have, I believe, and I think there's a lot of data to back it up, it'll make you better, it'll make you more efficient, it'll make you more effective, it'll make you more economical. Your results will go through the roof because you'll have a way to actually measure the results, and it will make a huge impact, and it will dramatically increase your learning curve, or decrease your learning curve, because you'll start to know what the difference that's making the difference is, and you'll quickly be able to cut and separate the wheat from the chaff and know what's very, very useful. One of the most famous examples of this in the very beginning was, Tony Robbins likes to take a lot of credit for it, but he was one of the helpers, actually, and it was Wyatt Wood Small and Richard Baylor, some other very well-known NLPers that got hired by the US government to improve their sharpshooting program. At that time, that program took about 30 days, and after about 30 days of intense training, less than 20% passed with a good enough grade to graduate into the field, and this was not acceptable. Richard and them went in and said, give us your top 5 sharpshooters, and using the distinctions of NLP, they asked them questions, they did some investigation, and they took that program and reduced it to a 7-day program with more than an 80% pass rate in short order. That is a dramatic increase in speed. And then you can use it to model excellence and pathology. One of the models I am known for is a model called the structure of upset, which I did during my time working with a very violent population of chronically mentally ill people. And these were people that would physically attack myself and the other staff members every single night without fail, with scissors, irons, anything they could get their hands on. One guy's eye would pop out, and when he calmed down, I have to help him put it back in, his glass eye, that he had taken out with the coat hanger. Very violent people. And they would get angry and blow up and attack the staff members. And I was trying to find a way to detect when they got angry sooner, find a way to head it off at the pass or prevent people from getting hurt. And that ended up becoming the model called structure of upset that we worked with. So I'm going to show you what's called the NLP map here, and I'm going to cruise through this super quick. I've got another video online that I can make available to people that will go into it in more greater detail. But this will give you a basic overview of what's called the NLP map, which is a great place to start. The next thing you would want to learn, and we may not have time to cover too much today, is you want to learn what's called the NLP presupposition. So I will make both of those videos available in the notes. It's over 2 hours of video as additional stuff to go along with this video here. So first thing is that in NLP, we say this is reality. This is the world. This is what's actually happening outside of your brain. So I'm going to teach you now how you create every reaction and response in your nervous system. This is what's actually going on outside of my mind, outside of Mike's mind. This is what the closed circuit TV cameras would capture, okay? So in NLP we call this reality, and scientists estimate that there's about 2 million bits of information we can absorb at any 1 second. Now if you study Bruce Lipton, you're going to hear a different set of numbers. These numbers come from a book called Flow by Mahai Csikszentmihalyi. The exact numbers don't matter at all to me. What matters is the difference between what's available and what we actually take in, and what we really take in is a tiny little bit of what's entirely available. So 2 million bits of reality. In NLP, this is often referred to as the territory, okay? And out of that 2 million, there's about 134 we can possibly take in between our conscious and our unconscious mind in any 1 second. We make, in essence, a map or like a collage in the mind. I like to use the word collage because we've all probably made one, or we've made a vision board where you've got a limited set of paper and you try to put some cool stuff in there. And if you've really done that, you've run out of space, or you found other things you wish you had in there, but there was no room for it. And this is often how it ends up happening in our minds with our reactions and responses. So we get this collage, and this collage is made of pictures and sounds and smells and tastes and feelings. And those could be sensations we feel or actual tactile feelings. So in NLP we call this the map about the experience, or the map about the territory. Another way to think about it is it's a collage about what's going on outside of your head. Okay, make sense so far? Yeah? Okay. And I'm going to give you a reference experience of this in your bones in our little time here together. Now in NLP we say there's 3 primary ways we go from 2 million down to 134. Like, what's going on here? If we tried to take everything in that's available to us, we'd be totally overwhelmed. It would be like a fire hose coming out, so we wouldn't be able to process it. But out of that, we can absorb maybe about 134. And so we delete tons of information that's irrelevant to us. Before I realized I was about to be a father, kids were never on my radar. I never thought of kids. I didn't look at kids. I only thought of kids if yours were too loud in the restaurant sitting next to me, and then I was annoyed with you. But, right? My mind deleted it. The moment I found out I was going to be a father, the very next day I'm driving to Starbucks to get my coffee, and I see a pregnant woman along the side of the road, and I can't stop looking at her. And then I see a van pull in front of me with a baby on board. And then I went to the Starbucks I had been to as an NLP trainer for over 5 years. And on that day I noticed the daycare right next door. I'd never seen it before. Suddenly it made sense why there was all those minivans and screaming kids all the time. And on the way to work that day, the same route I had driven for 7 years, I saw a children's hospital, a children's playground, a Kids R Us I'd never seen before. My mind deleted it, right? Now, the second way we alter reality is we distort information. We distort it because what you're going to find out is to make sense of anything, you have to compare it to something you're already familiar with, right? And so in San Francisco, there's this beautiful experiment in the Children's Discovery Museum where you have this pipe. And on one end of the pipe, you have a lukewarm coil, just like bath temperature. You could touch it all day long, no problem, very pleasant. On the other side, you have just mildly cold, like refrigerator temperature. Again, you could stand it all day long, just wrapping around. Now, when these two sensations intertwine in the middle of the pipe and you touch both of them at the same time, your instant reaction is to recoil your hand because it's going to feel like it's burning. And it's not. And then you can try it again, and after a while you can grab it and hold it just fine. Now, why is that? Because these two sensations would never occur simultaneously in a natural environment. So the mind, to make sense of this strange and bizarre sensation, has to distort it to make sense of it. Okay? And the third way is we generalize information. All men are this, all women are this, all coaches are that, all hypnotists are that, all sales guy, all tech people, right? All Germans, all Americans, the Trumpers, the non-Trumpers. We've got all these generalizations. Thank God we do, though.
The Irish.
Yeah, the Irish, right? Let's not forget the Irish. But realize if you couldn't generalize information, every time you got a new pair of shoes, you'd have to relearn how to tie your shoes. Every time you got a new car, you'd have to learn how to drive all over again. So we have this natural ability to generalize. The first person to really point this out was Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky, in his college thesis on transformational grammar, was the first to point out we are not responding to reality. We're responding to our own internal, made-up, distorted, skewed, and what you're going to find out tonight is a gender-driven view of reality in your mind. Nothing wrong with that, but you at least want to be aware of it so that if you take something personal, you're at least willing to do a double take. Okay, now, to give you an idea how much you delete, distort, and generalize information, we're going to make this fun, and I'm going to give you all a limited set of data. Okay? And then you are going to make up the rest. And we'll show you how your mind works. So here's a limited set of data. There's person A and person B. Person A runs up, hits person B. Decide right now what the story is. Now the first thing I want you to decide is who is A and who is B. Are we talking about man or woman, adult or child, alien or Sasquatch? Who is A? Who is B? What happened? Who's got a story? First story that comes to mind is the story you go with. There is no wrong answer. Who's got a story? Yes?
A is mother.
A is mother.
C's toddler.
C.
C's watches toddler choking, which is B.
Okay, okay.
Runs to the toddler and hits him so that the toddler spits out whatever he was choking.
Okay, so mother sees toddler choking, runs up, hits toddler, so they spit out whatever they're choking on and they survive. Okay, good. Who's got another story? What's your story?
A is mama cat, runs over and hits her kitten who was doing something she wasn't supposed to do.
So mama cat swipes at baby kitten for doing something she's not supposed to do. Okay, what's one more story?
I was in the Irish pub with her.
Yeah, we were having a
So
few buns.
somebody was like, coming over and talking smack over the Guinness, and the guy just got up and just decked him.
Okay, yeah, and that's a realistic scenario
That's a very
in an Irish bar.
And I was with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, did that really happen?
No, we were. You
No,
just
no,
said
but
something
like-
about Irish, and I was like, yeah, we'll have to go to the pub. So it was in my brain.
Last time I was in an Irish bar in San Francisco, I was asked if I was a limo driver because I was wearing a suit. So, yeah. Your story.
Well, branching off that, yeah, so at the time, the guy came up to the girl I was with, slapped her on the bum before even saying hi, and then I went over and I decked him.
Yep, okay, great. Now, first thing you want to notice that every story is totally different, right? What that means is, and no matter how similar you think the stories are, in 20 years, one time did two people have the same story, and it was about a cat. And the minute I asked them what color your cat is, the stories diverged. Okay, they're always going to be different, which means my map of reality, my collage about what's going on may be very different than yours. And one of the things we learn in NLP is to respect the fact that other people may not think exactly the same. Our natural tendency is to, when we want love, is to do what we would want to do to feel loved, and then we do that for other people because that's a natural starting place. But the reality of it is sometimes what may make me feel loved might cause you to feel the exact opposite, depending on how you're wired. And these are patterns that when you learn NLP, you can start to notice patterns. NLP is not about manipulating people against their will. That's one way to look at it. And there are people that use anything, including knives and guns, to do very unsavory things. Another way to think about NLP that I like to think about it is, if you really care about the person sitting in front of you, you can use NLP to be a better listener. You can use NLP to be more thoughtful. I can use NLP to convey to my fiancée that I love her much more effectively than I ever could before I learned NLP. Because before I learned NLP, I would simply do what works for me. I wouldn't necessarily take the time or have the skills to notice what would actually work for her. So it can make you a better person as well. And I believe that's the way I've used it, and I would encourage you to use it the same way. What happened here? Okay, so back to the story. So what happens is we get this collage in our minds, and It's limited. It's just got some pictures, some sounds, some feelings, some tastes, and smells in it. But it's just data. It doesn't mean anything. So now we got to try to make sense of it. We got to try and process it in some way. So what do? We take this collage and we compare it to other collages we have in our library. We go, is this one like this one? Like this time? Nah, not quite exactly. Is this one like this time? Nah, not quite exactly. Is this one like this time? It's just like that. And then and only then can we decide what something means. And until we decide what something means, we have no idea how we're going to feel or how we're going to act as a result. Take the example of going to your doctor, right? What's your first name?
Siobhan.
Siobhan, yeah. So let's say you go to your doctor, Siobhan, and doctor says, boy, we just did your physical, everything looks great. You're doing wonderful. By the way, there was a lump, however, and we'll have to do a biopsy. Could be nothing, but you know, just to be sure. And now you're in that limbo of not knowing what the meaning is. How do you feel? You a little stressed? You a little anxious till you get the call? I remember when I got the call about the lump in my throat to find out it was nothing. Until that moment, I wasn't so sure. And I was a little bit nervous. Think about the financial version. Your financial planner calls you up and says, well, it was a bull market. You know, the S&P outperformed and, you know, the international markets are really coming up a lot. Do we want to know that? I know I don't. All I wanted to do is choke my financial advisor and go, look, did I make money or lose money and how much? That's all I want to know. Because until I know that, I don't know if I'm happy or sad. What's the relationship version? You know, hi Mike, yeah, this is Susie. We need to talk. I'll be back in the country next month. Click, you know. And then for the next month, you don't know what's going on. You don't know how to feel, right? So it all comes down to the meaning that you make. The story, the meaning is the story we tell ourselves about what this is going to mean for us in the future. What is this telling me about what this is going to mean for me in the future? And until we decide what something means, we don't know how we're going to feel, and we don't know how we're going to act. And the other thing that's really important to point out here, because so many of us are terrified of feelings. We're terrified of a strange sensation in our body that doesn't instantly affirm everything's going to be okay. And we tend to freak out about it. And so it's really important and useful here to separate the story that I tell myself about what something means from the actual physical sensation I feel in my body when I think about it. These are very two different things. Why am I pointing this out? Because so often we get terrified of our feelings. My clients with panic attacks and stress and anxiety, the minute their heart rate goes up a little bit, they freak out because they go, oh my God, this could be a panic attack. But if you'll actually stop and notice, one thing you may realize is that the physical sensation of being scared and the physical sensation of being excited are almost identical. Sometimes they are identical. Horrible news and great news. The heart rate goes up, the blood pressure goes up a little bit, palms get a little bit sweaty, feet get a little bit, you know, you get a little weak around the knees. Would that happen if someone showed up and said you just won $10 million in the lottery? You think you might feel a little faint? But it's good news, right? So it all comes down to that meaning that we make. Does that make sense? Now let me ask you this. Have you ever wondered why your phone number has a dash every couple of digits?
Easier to remember.
Yep, Social Security number, yes. What's the best credit card out there? American Express. No one can remember it. Why? They squish all the numbers together. The human mind, now this is according to a guy named George Miller. In 1957, you know what I'm talking about. This guy's done his homework. George Miller in 1957, because these are avant-garde NLP references. He wrote a paper called The Magical Number 7 ± 2. And what he said was, essentially, on a great day, we can track about 9 things. On most days, it's about 5 or 6, right? And so we can only track a few things at a time. And so this is where we get the idea of 7 ± 2. So out of the 2 million bits of reality you could choose from, you're lucky. You're lucky if you can track 6 at once. Now imagine someone with an unconscious agenda, or even a conscious agenda. Imagine someone on a witch hunt looking for evidence to prove their theory is true. One of the fun things I'll do in the office is I'll have the client come up with the craziest, most outlandish theory they can think of, and then find real evidence to back it up on Google. And every time it works. One time someone said, well, if you blend tree frogs, they're good nutrition. We found an article that supported that. Okay? Right? In this day and age, you can find a tribe of people to back up any delusion that you want to invest yourself in. Am I right about that? Absolutely, right?
Politics,
Yes,
process,
yes.
yeah.
So we are always on an agenda in our mind. So one way to think about your attention, what I give my attention to is think of your attention like a stereo receiver. If I tune into classical, I'm going to get just classical, and that means by default I'm getting classical to the exclusion of everything else. If I tune into hip-hop, I get hip-hop to the exclusion of everything else. Okay? So whatever we tune into, we will get that, and we'll get that to the exclusion of everything else. Combine that with the fact that on most days you can track maybe 5 things at a time. And then think about how most people start their day. They get up, they drag themselves off to the coffee machine, they get their cup of coffee, and they go, I gotta call Bob today. And I gotta pay that bill. And they start thinking about all the stuff they don't want to do, they don't like, and they have to deal with, and they never emotionally get beyond that the rest of the day. Okay? Now, I hate to tell you this, but you all got the story wrong. It was actually 2 women, right? And the 2 women were going down the River Omo, and the River Omo happens to be a hotbed for malaria in Africa. Now, one of the women had read about the dangers of malaria, and she had read kind of the advisory board, and she saw a mosquito land on another woman's hand. She couldn't bear the thought of her getting a disease when she could stop it. So she went over and lightly tapped her on the hand and killed the mosquito. They instantly became best friends, and they spent the rest of the trip hanging out together, and they've been friends ever since. Now, why did I do that? Because in NLP we say if you change the map, you change the experience. Now let me ask you a question. When I added data to your map and enhanced your collage, did you instantly compare it to other examples in your mind? Instead of the guy slapping the woman on the bum and you having to take care of this, maybe you're comparing to acts of kindness, generosity, altruism. Instantly change what you compared it to, instantly change the meaning, instantly change the feeling, and it would change how you acted. Change your response, change your map. This is the promise of NLP. Does this make sense? Now, part of what NLP is good for is noticing recurring patterns of behavior. I call this in my clinic thought pattern identification. It's the ability to notice a recurring pattern of thinking or responding or behaving that produces a predictable result. And a lot of times we're caught in patterns over and over again that we're not even aware of. I'll give you an example. I had a baseball player who his coach sent him to see me because he was the star in high school. When he went to college, he was no longer the star, and he hit 3 people in a row who came up for bat. And he was in a very, very big slump, and he was way, way up in his head. And so there was a pattern of how he was preparing for the game that was keeping him stuck in that reality and was producing that same result. So for several games in a row before he was sent to see me, he was hitting people or almost hitting people and choking on the mound. He didn't realize that he was doing the same pattern over and over again. And when I just made him conscious of it and conscious of all the steps it took to do it and how much work it was to produce that unwanted result, he just stopped. I had a client with panic attacks, the same kind of thing. Once we successfully modeled out how she got anxious, she never did it again. We didn't even get to do the therapy process at the back end of that. Once she understood the pattern, she just stopped because she became conscious of it sooner. And that's really important. So there's patterns, and one of the patterns is what I call PPM. Now this is a little bit outside the realm of NLP. This is very specific to NLP Institute of California and how I train, and this is where a lot of my corporate consulting lies. But PPM stands for Personality Profile Matrix. And we all have a little bit of a different, unique personality and style to ourselves, right? And so your personality will determine how you delete, distort, and generalize information. It'll literally determine what you even allow in for consideration. And I'll give you an example. So as a child, I have a strong, what we call freedom part of my personality. You do too, for sure, no question in my mind. Freedom people want to do what they want to do when they want to do it. They don't want to be told otherwise. It's all about options, options, options. Our attitude is give me liberty or give me death. And the thing that stresses us out the most, correct me if I'm wrong, is feeling restricted, limited, or controlled. We hate it. We absolutely hate it. Boxed in. Makes us act out completely, right? So when I was a kid, and I saw this massive rope swing my neighbor put out over this ravine, all I could think about was swinging one arm like Tarzan over the ravine, banging my chest. The fact that I could get hurt never occurred to me. Literally never crossed my mind. All I could think about was how good it was going to feel to swing out over the ravine and back. When I went to ask to do it, he said, no, this is dangerous even for adults. So I said, I'll come back when he's not here. And I did. And it never occurred to me that I could get hurt until I broke my arm in 2 places. A couple years later, I got invited on a church ski trip. Same deal. I went, I got my skis, I got up the biggest lift I could. All I could think about was flying down a hill. It never occurred to me I might need a lesson. Ended up back in the emergency room. I impaled myself. I've died, almost died surfing. I've done a whole bunch of things. Because safety and security never occurred to me ever. As a kid, it never entered my mind. It wasn't even up for evaluation. Your personality will determine how you put together collages in your mind. It will determine what you store in your library. I didn't have examples of safety and security in my library. I had examples of free or trapped. And I always took free. It also determines the meaning we make, because the meaning we make about everything will always be in service of our primary unconscious agenda. So if you have something to prove about yourself, which a lot of coaches do, if you have a need to be competent, if you have a need to be seen as, you know, at the top of your game, a go-to person, a problem solver, right? If you secretly like validation but hate to admit it, because all competency-based people do, right? We really want that validation, but we'll never admit it. We'll just say we're self-driven. But really what's driving that underneath is fear of feeling incompetent. So if you're competency-based, what always attracts us is getting results, huge challenge, climbing Mount Everest, getting the medal for running the marathon, all that kind of stuff that gives lots of validation. And feeling disrespected, unappreciated, or incompetent is our biggest, deepest, darkest fear, which is why so many coaches sabotage their own success. When you know these patterns, you can start to predict ahead of time. We call this preemptive conditioning, where and when your clients will get stuck and what will happen ahead of time. And let me tell you the difference between preemptive conditioning and not. It's the difference between them believing you and building credibility and thinking you're a liar even when you're telling the truth. Because if I explain why you did what you did after the fact with a good story, you might believe me, but you might not. But if I tell you ahead of time exactly what's going to happen in week 2, 3, and 4 of your program before it happens and warn you against it, and then it happens, you will believe what I said way more. And we can absolutely start to push that out and show people those patterns. What doing that does is it gives you more choice over your own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay? So some of the big takeaways from here, besides it really comes down to meaning, and that we're always on an unconscious agenda. So take everything that you think and feel, whatever, with a grain of salt. Okay? One of the promises, though, if you change that map, you can change your experience. Prior to learning NLP, when I felt a certain way about something, I just thought that must be the way it is. Right? Some people are introverted, some people are extroverted. Some people are more athletic, some people are maybe more brainy, right? And there's like these different categories. And I had myself kind of, you know, evaluated and sized up. I wasn't aware of it, but I kind of did. A good example of that would be, I remember going to the doctor in high school, and every time I would try to run, I'd get a lot of pain in my knee here, and it hurt really, really bad. So I went to a doctor like most people do, and I'd say, when I try to run, my knee hurts really, really bad. So he looked at my feet and he says, well, you're flat-footed. He goes, that's the problem. He goes, you have no arch here and you have no arch here. That's why your knee hurts. So I went, he's a doctor, he's credible, he's given me a story to explain why my knee hurts. It fits, so that must be true. And I closed the book. Years later, after I learned NLP, I said, what if that's not true? What if there's another way that I could learn to run? Every time I'd tried running shoes before, they'd always give me those really hard casts because I had flat feet. That's what we do with people with flat feet. And they'd hurt and they were uncomfortable. So I watched videos of Kenyan runners. I watched videos of cheetahs and animals running in nature. I watched all these weird videos, and using NLP, I taught myself how to run. I've run several marathons, several half marathons, no injuries, no pain, no problem. I questioned all that because I learned NLP, and it made me go back and rethink everything. Because one of the things that happens that we don't even realize is that during the imprint phase of life, whether it's between the ages of 3 and 13 or 2 and 7, depending on who you ask, but in that early phase of life, we have what's called imprint experiences. So if you have any kind of irrational emotional reaction to people, places, things, thoughts, or ideas, chances are that's an old imprint from the past. One of the things you can do with that is when you get that weird feeling inside, go, allow that feeling to take me back to the last time I felt that, or an earlier time. We call it the first or the worst. Okay? And so what happens is we get these imprints. An imprint is nothing more than a strong emotional feeling, a unique stimulus, and then a decision or a story we make about ourselves, about what's possible for me or myself or others in the world. And then we run with that. So imagine, you know, I don't know about you, but for me, between the ages of 3 and 13, for sure, I was not qualified to make major life decisions about how I was going to spend the rest of my life. But that's what people are doing. During these imprint phases of life, we make decisions about ourselves. I'm athletic, I'm not athletic. I'm this, I'm that. You know, I'm eloquent, I'm not eloquent. I'm social, I'm extrovert, I'm introverted. And then we tell ourselves a story, and then we close the book, and we never reconsider it again. Learning NLP will get you to reconsider it. It'll also get you to start to consider things like, stop trying to change the content of your thinking, because it doesn't work. You ever try to get rid of an intrusive thought? Has it ever worked, ever? Even once? No, right? What's that classic thing? Don't think of the purple elephant. Don't think of the purple elephant, Mike. Get it out of your head. And don't put the blue hat on it again, right? Don't think of the purple elephant with the blue hat, right? You can't do it. But what you can do is you can change how you think about it, which is something I'd never heard about from NLP. How much time do you have left? Can we do this?
We have exactly 5.
Exactly 5 minutes. Okay, great. So here's what I'm going to ask everyone to do. I'd like everyone to make a picture of something in your mind that bothers you. Like, it could be something that happened yesterday. It could be something that happened 20 years ago, right? But whatever that is, maybe it's a fight with a loved one. Maybe it's how a boss did you dirty back in the day. Maybe it's, you know, the girl or the guy that didn't talk to, whatever it is. But get that thought in your mind and make a picture of it in your mind. And on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being really yucky, 0 being doesn't bother me at all, I want to know, how bad is it? Give me a number. Look at that picture in your mind and give me a number. And how bad is it on a scale of 0 to 10? What's your number?
9.
9. Okay, great. What's your number? 10. Anyone else got a number? 6. Okay, great. Now here's what I want you to do. All I want you to do is, we have this image in our mind. I want you to notice where that image lives. Is it right here in front of my face? Is it 5 feet out? Is it up? Is it to the left? Is it to the right? Is it down here? Where's that image live in your mind? Point to it for me. Okay, now here's what I want you to do. For those of you who was 10 and 9, take that image, right? How close is yours? She's going right here. So the camera can't see this, but the people in front of us are going, the people that said 9 and 10 is like right here. Now here's what I want you to do, right? Move it 100 yards out. Don't change what happened. Don't change the past. Take the picture, push it 100 yards out. Okay? Now, when you look at it 100 yards out, this is called moving in NLP what we call a submodality. For some of you, this will be more impactful than others. When you moved it 100 yards out, re-rate it for me.
Drop to a 6.
Drop to a 6. From a what to a what?
9 to 6.
From a 9 to a 6. Okay? Put it 200 yards out.
4.
Put it 1,000 yards out.
1.5.
1.5. Put it 1,000 yards behind you.
Don't see it.
Put it in a slingshot and shoot it up into the sky and watch it blow up into the sun.
Oh, that's cool.
Now here's my question for you, Cheryl. Okay? You've taken the same issue that you probably felt very consistently about most of your life, yes? And you went from a 9 to a 6 to a 4 to a 1.5 to what?
0.
To 0 in a matter of less than a minute. Now, is that a permanent fix? No. Probably not for Cheryl. I'm not suggesting that this is a permanent fix to a solution. But here's the point I'm trying to make. If you took the same issue and you felt a 9 and a 6 and a 4 and a 1.5, which feeling was true?
Each.
Which one?
Each one.
Think about the profoundness of that realization. If you can take the same issue and feel a 10, a 9, a 4, and a 1.5, which one's true? None of them and all of them. None of them and all of them, which means if you don't like the way you feel about something, you can change it without having to change what happened. Because a lot of us have had stuff that has happened that we cannot change, but we wish we could undo. And we can't necessarily change what happened, but we can certainly change what we do with it in our minds. One of the stories I began with today, the reconsolidation of traumatic memories. In trauma, what they now know is happening is that it's a past event being experienced as a present-day threat to the nervous system. To the nervous system, it feels like it's happening right now. When we reconsolidate the memory, it goes into a past memory. Vets that would come up to the front of the room for the demo like this, can you come up here, Mike, real quick, and let me just demo this? Initially, when they would come out for the demo, this one vet would come like this. He'd be like, very guarded. This is a guy that threw his body into a fire hole in Vietnam to save his crew. Thank you. But afterwards, right, after doing a 90-minute treatment, he hugged the person that worked with him. He went from this to hugging him, and then he wouldn't leave. He stayed at the workshop for the next 3 days. He wouldn't leave. We ended up giving him a manual and let him sit in the back. He wouldn't go home. This is one of the problems we've had with vets when we teach them this. They just want to hang out because they're finally opening up. And so if you're carrying around old stuff from the past, right, you don't have to carry it around anymore. Okay? So real quick, the last thing I want to show you here, if we can do it. Is how NLP helps you as a coach. So the 4 primary ways are clear, compelling, measurable, and attainable goals. I don't have time to go into this, but in NLP there's a whole concept called the well-formed outcome. And we talk about really getting clear on what we want, how we'll know when we have it, where, when, and with whom do we want it, right? What's the first step? And then having a logical, coherent way to measure our success as we make progress towards that. And also a good, compelling goal has a powerful why and is in line with what you value most. And also takes into account your personality so you don't cause sabotage. One of the problems I had as a freedom guy was that us freedom guys, we don't like to be nailed down. So what do you think happened when my schedule filled up and I was seeing 20 people a day, 4 days a week? Do you think I got burned out? Do you think I resented it? Do you think it started to affect my work? You bet it did. So I had to make sure that my business model respected how my nervous system flows like a river. You fight your nervous system, you fight your personality. It's like swimming upstream versus floating down. Second thing is, it's a multi-level approach to change. I didn't get a chance to go into this. In NLP, it was something called the neurological levels of change. And we talk about when you make a change at a higher level, it automatically changes everything beneath it. So if you want to change your environment, right? Like if your house is dirty, how do you do it? You got to take a behavior, right? You got to go and clean it and do something. So behavior changes environment, right? Well, then there's behaviors, there's skills and capabilities, there's beliefs and values, there's your identity, and there's even a larger, more powerful why. And when you learn to work on these different, what we call neurological levels of change, which is written about extensively by Robert Dilts, I've got videos online about that as well, you learn where to target the change so it has maximum effectiveness and trickle down. If a person doesn't have the belief systems to support that they can lose 100 pounds and keep it off, do you think it's going to be harder for them to take the actions and behaviors necessary to do that, or to build the skills and capabilities of managing it? Yeah, because they don't even believe it's possible. If you don't believe you can dance, you're not going to take dance lessons, more than likely. The ability to predict roadblocks ahead of time, right? So I'll tell people, I say, if you're freedom, man, you know, what's great about working with you is high risk tolerance. You don't care how we get to the end goal, as long as we get there. I can say, I know we said we were going to do this week, but forget that, we're doing something else. You're fine, yeah. Right? But the challenge is, if you're freedom, we know, right, is that impatient. And we're not good at being a dignified beginner. We're very impatient. We're not good at being a dignified beginner. And all freedom people will look at any program you offer them like an a la carte menu, even when they're telling you they're not. They are. They're looking at it like an a la carte menu. So when I offer up my program, they'll look at it and go, I like this. I'll take this. I'll leave that out. I'll change this here. I'm going to add this thing over here. I'm going to combine it with other stuff that I learned and make it my own. And they won't ever follow my program until their program doesn't work. But if I tell you that on week 1, that it's going to take me to week 6 to get you fully on board, and it does, then you'll believe that I knew what I was talking about. And I do. All right. Also, notice patterns that affect behavior and change them. You can notice patterns, interrupt patterns, as Lanny was talking about at last session. And then you get tools, real tools, for traumas, imprints. There's a belief change process. There's a process for shocking images, for intrusive thoughts. I've done work with things even like allergies under doctor supervision. I worked with allergies and asthma and helped condition those out of the nervous system. The belief is they're like a phobia of the immune system. And did you know that the first vaccination ever was based off of what's called a counterexample process? It was the milkmaids that got cowpox and recovered from cowpox who became immune to smallpox back in the day. And that's how they developed the first vaccine, is they found that out by noticing patterns. Okay? If you want more, and this is what we'll end on, the slide we'll end on, you can go to nlpca.com. And if you're interested in personal work, you can go to nlpca.com/eval, and there's a little video there about feeling stuck. And then, if you want the notes, text me your contact information and say, send me the notes from the ACCN workshop, and I'll send them to you. I'll send you all the slides that I covered today, and I'll send you a link to the 2 videos that I promised, what is NLP and how does it work, and the presuppositions of NLP, because presuppositions we didn't have time to talk about today, but they're kind of like, these are like the beliefs or the operating system or the philosophy of a true NLPer, someone who really embodies NLP, like behind every behavior is a positive intended result. I've never met anyone who smokes cigarettes trying to get lung cancer. Have you? Have you ever met someone eating a jelly donut trying to get diabetes? It just doesn't happen. There's always a positive intended result behind the behavior. And if you can find out what that is, you can help them better serve that. Okay? And there's lots of philosophies like that that are built into NLP when you really take it on. So as you begin to learn, as you start to take this information in, if you have questions, feel free to call and ask or come to an NLP training. Okay? That's it. Yeah.